Hey everybody, it's a Stable Lad with another video. Today I'm going to talk about layer 1 and layer 2 blockchains. So the biggest sort of layer 1 that we talk about is called Ethereum, for those of you that aren't familiar. But there are multiple different layer 1 blockchains that compete with Ethereum. Solana is one of them, Avalanche is another sort of major one. And then you've got a handful of others that have various degrees of activity on those chains. Things like Polkadot, for example, and there's a bunch of others. But those are. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about all the different layer ones. But basically, each layer one, they call it a layer one because it's the sort of base layer, right, of the entire blockchain, and everybody wants to be the big layer one. Everyone wants to win the layer one war and be the blockchain that everybody uses. Ethereum just happens to be the biggest, most utilized blockchain in the space. Solana is closely behind that, and then Avalanche is very, very far below that. And everything else sort of has its value in the chains, but Ethereum just far and away sort of exceeds all of them in terms of just overall activity. It's the sort of OG in the space. And each different layer one, generally why you have competing layer ones is you have different architecture. And I'm not going to go into the technical details of each different sort of architecture, but some prioritize decentralization over others, some prioritize security, some prioritize transactions per second or cost. And there's just a bunch of different things that you can do that have a bunch of different trade-offs. Again, maybe a recording for a different time where I go a little bit more deep into the architecture behind the layer ones. But I'm sure there's plenty of other videos out there that do a really good job of that. And I also want to talk today not just about layer ones, but also about layer twos. So what layer twos are is really kind of more specifically for the Ethereum blockchain. Ethereum is, as I mentioned, the most utilized blockchain. It has the deepest sort of depth in terms of liquidity pools and volume and trades and developers building on it and all kinds of different stuff going on in the chain. But unfortunately, it's a little bit slow and it's very, very expensive to use. And so because it's expensive, there have been several different development communities that have built a layer on top of Ethereum. And the idea behind it is that you get to utilize the robust network of Ethereum. You get to utilize the security of the chain to some extent. But yet you're building these chains on top of Ethereum that run much faster and are much, much cheaper. And I'm going to kind of show you how much cheaper they are and why I like to utilize mostly layer twos for the purposes of the Stable Lad, for the purposes of my stablecoin portfolios. So let's take a look here. I've got here on the screen Etherscan, which is you could use this tool to track the blockchain. You could see everything that's going on the blockchain pretty much on Etherscan here. You can go here and scroll. You can see transactions. You can view blobs. You can look at the different types of tokens. You can look at NFTs. You can do all different kinds of things on here. But I'm going to use it today for the purpose of kind of just showing you what's known as GUI, which is basically gas. Every time you use the blockchain, there is a gas fee. Think of the blockchain kind of like a highway. In order to drive on the highway, you need gas, right? You need some sort of oil. ETH has their token, and every single time you do a transaction, there's a token. They take a small amount of that token to do the transaction. So the easiest way, I'm just going to show you this here. The easiest thing that most people do on the blockchain is they send a transaction. And sending a transaction is basically the equivalent of sending an email. Only in the sort of traditional internet space, when you send an email, you're sending information. In the blockchain space, the only real difference is that you're sending value. But it's the same really concept, right? So in here, you would go onto I'm just going to use this web page, CrowdSwap, just to sort of, because they have a nice picture of showing what a wallet looks like without showing you my own. And what you would do is you'd open up a wallet and you're going to choose what you want to send. In this region here, this is the address. This is the equivalent of an email address. Instead of an email address like like abc123@yahoo.com, you're going to put in this long coded address. There have been some really cool advancements in crypto now that actually allow you to do what's the sort of equivalent of an email address. So you could be like abc123@eth. At eth, which is sort of the equivalent of the email address. And what that does is it takes a cool like name, and it's what you see in front, and in the back is this code, this long multi-layered code here, which is the actual address. So anyway, but here's where you'd put the address. Then you're going to choose the asset you want to send, USDC, Bitcoin, Ethereum, whatever it is that you want to send. And then down here, you're going to choose the amount that you want to send. Then you'll click next and you'll send the transaction. That's the easiest thing. And when you do that, you can see here, you can see all the different things that it's telling you there's transactions for. We can take a look here. So a transfer costs 21,000 Gwei. It's the cheapest thing right now. This is just sort of updated recently, and that's about 7 cents on Ethereum. Okay, that's the cheapest thing. Most of us aren't going to do that except for one time, right? We're going to send our USDC to our wallets. It's going to cost us 7 to whatever cents, depending on what you're using. That'll be the cheapest transaction we ever do on Ethereum, is sending a transaction. And every other time you do a transaction or you're interacting with a smart contract, which is basically doing anything on the blockchain, you're interacting with a smart contract, on Ethereum specifically, or any other layer 1 or layer 2, there's additional costs. And you can see here for every single thing we do, the costs get higher and higher and higher. So an ERC approval, let's say, for example, you want to put money into a smart contract. You want to put your USDC into a smart contract because you want to invest it, right? You want to put it in Uniswap or Aave or whatever. You need to approve your USDC. So the smart contract will pop up and say, hey, you want to deposit USDC, that's great. Let's approve that you're giving me the rights to take your USDC, the amount that you want, and you're going to give me the right in the smart contract to take that USDC and put it into some sort of vault or some sort of investment vehicle. That's an ERC20 approval, and that you're going to pay 15 or way more cents. This is just, again, sort of updated right now. As the market gets used and as the blockchain gets used more, these prices go up. Imagine the blockchain again, like that highway, like we talked about. The more traffic there is, the more people that's using that highway, the larger these prices go up. The more the gas prices go up, et cetera, right? Supply and demand. So this is actually fairly low right now at 13 cents. And it's adjusting right now in real time, 12 cents. It's going down. It gets a lot higher. I think I paid 47 cents last week for one of my approvals. Okay, so that just kind of goes to show you that just on any given day, it can go up and down. And then once I want to do something, like anything here, right? Look, if I'm providing Uniswap liquidity, for example, it's 66 cents right now, right? So this is a strategy I use all the time, right? Where I'm actually taking my USDC or USDT or whatever it is, a stable coin, I'm approving it from this first transaction, right? This is the approval at 13 cents. And then I'm depositing that money into a Uniswap V3 liquidity pool. And I'm paying 66 cents for that liquidity approval, okay? ENS registration right down here is that cool thing I was talking about where you can you can have a cool name. So if your name is, Jim, you could be like Jimbo on Ethereum. And that will, Jimbo on Ethereum, if it's available, will be your kind of your email address, essentially, that matches to your wallet address. It makes it easier for people to send you money. Just send it over to Jimbo on Ethereum. But anyway, every single time that you use the blockchain, every single time that you interact with a smart contract, there are these fees, and they can add up really, really quickly. If you were to do something on, for example, I really love Pendle Finance. Pendle Finance is a super cool thing. I've talked about it on this channel before. And what's really, really cool with it, we could take a look at markets here. Let's just take a look at Ethereum. You have these really, really cool markets. This is a fixed rate. Okay, these are fixed rates, meaning that when you put your money in here, it's fixed. You're going to get this money back at this percentage, which is really, really cool. So you could take like something like Athena here and have a pool that's going to earn you 14.98%. Here's the fixed deal. The problem is on Ethereum, that when you use this pool, and you'll find out if you play around with Pendle, putting money into a Pendle contract costs you something like $10. Okay, so it costs you something like $10. If you put $1,000 in here and you're expecting to make 15%, and it's going to cost you $10 to put in here and maybe another 4 or 5 to withdraw, or maybe it is another $10 to withdraw, you've basically annihilated your APY. Your APY being 15%, and it's going to cost you 20% basically to take it out, or excuse me, it's going to cost you not 20%, excuse me, like 2 or 3% to take it out. You're going to like crush this thing. So you got to make sure that the amount that you're putting in there, if you're putting in a lot of money, if you got $1 million that you're putting in here, or $100,000, it can make a lot of sense to pay the $10, right? If you're putting in $100 and you're putting in, if you have like just $100 and you're paying 10%, $10 to put it in, that's 10% of your amount. So you're just crushing your APY. So you want to make sure that if you're interacting with Ethereum, which I do, that you're playing with large amounts on Ethereum. You could take a look here on DeFi Llama, right? We could take a look at our stablecoin pools on DeFi Llama. And we could take a look just on Ethereum, for example, right? And we could take a look at APYs on Ethereum. And APYs on Ethereum are generally really, really good. They're really good because, as I mentioned, this is one of the deepest layer 1 blockchains out there. And so people use it, right? So they're doing all kinds of major large swaps. People have tons of money and value on Ethereum, and they're playing with the chain all the time. The developers are using it. Users are using it. They're buying NFTs. They're trading. They're doing all kinds of things. And so you have really, really large, good pools at really, really high value. Here's a Pendle, a pool here at 28%, right? Here's another one. I don't know what Sherlock is. Let's go down further. There's another Pendle one at 24%. So you have really, really good pools here on protocols that I like Pendle, for example. Euler's another good protocol. Uniswap's another one here at like 23%. This pool is paying. But in order to interact with Ethereum on a regular basis, you better be playing with some decent amount of money. Otherwise, that APY is just going to crush. That APY is going to get crushed by the fees that you pay on the chain. So if you want to be a little bit more nimble, if you're not playing with a ton of money, you want to use layer 2 blockchains. And I'll give you kind of some examples. Here's one called Arbitrum. Arbitrum is a layer 2 blockchain built on top of Ethereum. It was one of the first. Optimism was the first. Arbitrum was basically the major second. But Arbitrum has far and away surpassed the optimistic blockchain, and they do tons of volume. There's tons of options available, and we'll kind of I'll show you that in a second. But you can just take a look here. Take a look at the difference, right? Right between what we just saw when we looked at Ethereum. Here we got Ethereum. We got nothing cheaper than 6 cents on here, and then we're looking at like 40, 50, 60, 70 cents a transaction. And then here, if you're looking on Arbitrum, you're looking at 0 cents, which is basically a fraction of a penny. It's not zero, it's a fraction of a penny. All the way down to the same things that we were looking at before. ENS transaction here is a penny, right? That's what they're estimating at, is a penny. So it's incredibly fast and it's incredibly cheap to use the Arbitrum blockchain. Now we could take a look back over here on DeFi Llama, and we can look at Arbitrum only. And what we're going to see is we're going to see still really decent APY here, but you're going to see a lot less action on this blockchain. So there comes some, there is some risk with utilizing these layer 2 blockchains, meaning that's like there's just a lot less action on here. So you're going to have to like probably move positions. You're going to have to be a little bit more nimble moving positions a little bit more often potentially. When something's not working, you just swap it out and move it into a different position. But the fact that it's so cheap and fast to do so makes it enticing to use these blockchains. So you can take a look here. We've got like DAI USDT on Uniswap. Again, a nice pool here that pays really, really well. It pays 16%. You got your 30-day average at 13%, so that's pretty darn good. And we've got like a pretty decent chain here, a pretty decent thing to play around with, right? Again, you can kind of just scroll down and look at USDC on SushiSwap. It's paying 15%. Again, a nice pool. there's nothing wrong with these returns, and it costs you a fractions of a penny to deal with this. So if you've got only $1,000, $2,000 that you're playing with, you're going to want to use one of these layer 2 blockchains, because the pools are so much cheaper that you can actually, like, you really are making it. Like when you look at 22%, this is what you're actually making, because the fees aren't eating into your profits. Take a look at another one. Base is another layer 2 blockchain. It's built by the Coinbase folks. So Coinbase has built their own layer 2 blockchain. It's growing like crazy. It's an awesome blockchain. I enjoy using it. It's super fast. It's super cheap. It's not as decentralized as like a lot of blockchains that I like, but it's a really good one to use. It's a little bit more expensive than Arbitrum, as you can kind of see here, but we're talking about pennies and fractions of a pennies. It's really not that expensive to use, and Base continues to kind of do things to adjust and lower their costs over time. Optimism is another one I mentioned. This was the first real layer 2 built on top of Ethereum, and it's probably the cheapest. There's a lot less action going on this chain. We'll take a look over here. Let's just really quick look at Base, just to kind of, so you can kind of just take a gander, a peek at what's going on Base. There's some pretty decent action going on here. These weird ones on Aerodome, I don't like a lot of these, because these are, while they're stable coins, they're not stable to each other. So there's a lot of impermanent loss that can become permanent on these. I'll talk about that in future videos. I've already talked about it a little bit on previous videos when I talked about Uniswap and investing in DEXs. But essentially, those are risky, so I'm just scrolling down here. Take a look here. You got 20%, 21% on Yearn Finance. So these are some decent pools. There's some good stuff happening on Base. We'll take a look at, can we see Optimism? Here we go, Optimism. Optimism has some decent stuff going on it, but again, it's not as active of a chain, so you're not seeing as much cool stuff on here. And then the last one, what we'll do is we'll just kind of look here. We'll take a look at Solana, which is another layer 1 blockchain. So if you didn't want to use Ethereum, you can use like something like Solana or Avalanche. Most of these other layer 1s, they're competing with Ethereum on price and speed. So they've sacrificed some security for price and speed. And so Solana it basically operates the same way a layer 2 chain operates, except it's siloed on its own chain. So there's a lot of cool stuff happening on stuff like Solana. You're not seeing the great APYs on Solana because DeFi is not as big on Solana as it is on Ethereum and on the layer 2s on Ethereum. But it's still a chain that if you really like using, and if you're onboarding on Solana, it's still a chain worth checking out. They've still got cool stuff. I mean, Camino Lend, this is a great pool on Camino Lend. It's paying 16.89%. It's got 13 million in total value, and it's USDC. Camino is a great protocol on Solana. The only thing I would sort of look here is I'd say 30-day average at 4.7% shows me that for some reason there's a spike, and the last 30 days hasn't been as good or as nice. Anyway, we'll take a look at that. Avalanche is another layer 1 chain I've mentioned on here. They do have some pretty great APYs, and they actually have a decent amount of DeFi happening on Avalanche. It's probably worth checking out if you like playing around on some of these other blockchains. They've got some cool stuff going on over here. So let's just quickly summarize. The blockchain is a lot like email, right? But instead of sending information, we're sending value. And every time we send value, whether it's to another wallet on the blockchain, so like if I'm sending money to my mom on the blockchain, right? She has a wallet, I have a wallet. It's the same thing as sending an email. That's the easiest, simplest transaction. If I want to swap, say I want to take my USDC over here and I want to swap it for USDT, another stable coin, one like this, right? That's going to be another transaction. We can take a look at here what swapping costs, right? Swapping on Uniswap costs 40 cents here, or 50 cents, depending on which system I'm using. So each time I send money to somebody, or each time I swap, or each time I put money into a vault or an investment vehicle on the blockchain, every single thing I do, every interaction on the blockchain has a fee associated with how sort of complex and complicated it is, the thing that I'm doing, basically. And if you want to use Ethereum, you're gonna want to do it with large amounts of money. So if you have, if you're playing with $1 million, I would probably spend the majority of my time on Ethereum. I definitely still have money on layer twos, but with $1 million, I would be playing all the time with Ethereum. If you're $1,000, if I have only $1,000 to spend, I'm going to be focusing on either a layer 1 like Solana or Avalanche entirely, or I'm going to move to a layer 2 like Arbitrum, for example, that has really, really cheap fees and a lot of activity. And you can, again, use these same tools that I've been talking about every single week, where I go on here and if rule of thumb, if you got $100,000, $1 million, come on Ethereum. Come on over here. The water's warm. It's nice to play with. Everyone's over here. Some incredible protocols that have the most battle testing, the most security, the most volume inside of it. And you've got a lot of options over here on the Ethereum blockchain. If, however, you have less, you have $1,000 to play with, $2,000, $5,000 to play with, I'd focus on some of these other chains. If you've been onboarded on Solana, play with Solana. That's fine. If you've been onboarded on Avalanche, play with Avalanche. If you haven't been onboarded, I would go to something like Arbitrum, or I would go onto DeFi Llama, see where you have the best APYs, where you start feeling the most comfortable, and that's where I'd start playing with my money on there. Another cool thing to kind of mention here is one little cool hack, just to sort of mention as I wrap this up, is in Robinhood, the accounts are so easy to set up, and I think it's really, really just a great way to sort of onboard people who haven't been onboarded before. I personally use it to, when I want to put fresh capital in crypto. I just find it to be super easy. One of the coolest things you can do, I tried to get a picture here, but I couldn't find a good image of it, is you can go onto Robinhood, deposit money into your crypto wallet, and then with your USDC, you can send it to your own wallet afterwards, your own sort of MetaMask wallet or whatever wallet Zorion you choose. I'll do a future video about which wallets I like best. But whether you use a MetaMask wallet or Phantom or Zorion or any of these other really good wallets out there, you just basically plug in your address into Robinhood, and then when you're sending USDC, a little thing pops up that allows you to say which blockchain are you sending USDC to. And you can send it to Arbitrum, you can send it to Base, you can send it to any one of these, you can send it to Ethereum mainnet, you can send it to any of them, and it does the automatic conversion for you and sends it there for free. So that's kind of just a cool hack. Otherwise, if you sent everything to like your Ethereum wallet, for example, then you'd have to do things like what's called bridging, where you'd go into your wallet and you'd bridge that money over. So you would go to something like this, Arbitrum, and you would take your money here and you would bridge over, whatever it is that you have. If you have USDC, you would type in USDC here and it would show USDC. It shows the balance here, right, because I'm just using a test dummy account. And then you would put it over here into your Arbitrum account. From Ethereum to Arbitrum. You can do from Ethereum, you can do this particular bridge is a bridge to Arbitrum, for example, but they have a bridge to Base. They've got a bridge to any one of these things, and you can do that. You can also do that within the wallet itself. So if you opened up your wallet, there's a bridge function in your wallet. It's just more expensive. Again, I'll do future content about sort of the ins and outs of how you would do all this stuff from a very beginner's perspective. But essentially, Robinhood makes it really, really easy, and it's a really cool little hack that sends the assets in the actual token that you want to send it into over to the blockchain that you want it to send it to. So again, hopefully that's a helpful primer for anybody who is looking at starting to do this on their own, whether it's using mainnet Ethereum layer 1 or whether it's using an alternative layer 1 like Solana or Avalanche, or using a layer 2 blockchain like Arbitrum or Base or Optimism or Polygon. There's so many others that you can use and play around with. I'll do another future video too on specifically on all the layer 2s that I've invested in and played around with, but I tend to stick with the sort of major ones that I mentioned today. Hopefully that was helpful. And until next time, I'm the Stable Lad.
I'm the Stable Lad, and if you like today's video, please hit that subscribe button. Every week I break down what's happening in the world of stablecoins and why it matters, clearly, calmly, and without the hype. This channel is for educational purposes. It is not meant to be financial advice, so always do your own research and manage your risk wisely.